All right, so one of the first things we have to do is take off our lug studs. So I'll show you what they look like. They're 17 millimeters. It's not just a regular lug nut. We're going to take off this clip right here. Use a flathead right in here and pull your clip. So right behind these boots right here is your caliper slider. You use a flathead and just take off these caps. That's 1, 2. I'm going to use a 7 millimeter Allen head. There's 1. Same to the other. Starts moving around a little bit. Here's our caliper. Take a peek at your piston. This looks good. Set it aside. Time to remove the outer pad. I'm going to use an 18 millimeter wrench. Put it right on my bracket bolt. Just give it a couple bonks with my rubber mallet to break them free. Move along to my ratchet wrench. Remove your bracket. Now we're going to use our T30 bit. We're going to remove this. Just pull that right off of there. All right, so pay attention to which way that this adjuster is going. Once you have that in mind, you can take a pry bar or your pliers or whatever you've got. Just try to separate the shoes and pull this adjuster out. Set this aside. Okay, I'm gonna come right up here to this spring. And these, you generally just give them a little quarter turn. Once you push in, it should wanna free up. There it is. I'm gonna pull out this spring. That's what it looks like. And this little tab right here is what goes through the backing plate and then locks in. Now I'm going to get this spring off of here. Okay. And do the same to this one right down here. There it is. Get this out of here. Now we're going to grab our shoes, separate them, and bring them out. There we are. At this point, take that last spring off of there, set all this aside. All right, so this right here is your e-brake pivot. When you pull on the e-brake, it pulls the line, and then it's supposed to make this pivot. Sometimes they get frozen, so you want to make sure you get them freed up. There we go. This should be able to move freely, just like that. I like to use a little bit of caliper grease right along here. And that's just so this can move around. Slide in there nice. Perfect. We're going to grab a brush, clean up our backing plate. The raised areas on your backing plate is where the shoes are going to ride. That's the most important area to make sure you clean. So you want to make sure that you clean up all the rust that might be sitting up along the top of this wheel bearing. You can just use your brush for that, or whatever you have. And that's just to make sure that nothing can fall down and cause noise once you get this all back together. We're going to use a little bit more caliper grease, and we're going to go on all those raised points where the shoes are going to ride. All right, so we've got our shoes and our spring. Just take the upper shoe, set it in there, just like that. I'm going to take the other shoe. I'm going to see if I can get the spring to want to go in a slot, just like that. And then pull it down. There it is. So we've got our shoe mounting hardware here. Put it through the shoe, line it up with the slot in the backing plate, and then push it through. Once it's through the slot in the backing plate, just give it a little spin. Very nice. Do the same to the other one. Beautiful. We have our adjuster. It comes apart. There's actually 3 pieces to it. It's a good idea to make sure that it's nice and clean. So I'm going to take this to a wire brush, and I recommend you doing the same. So we have our 3 pieces. Cleaned them up nice. I'm going to use a little bit more of that caliper lube. Screw that back on. Another little dab. This is going to be nice and lubricated. Set that aside for 1 second. We have our spring. All right, so we've got the top on. Now I'm going to try to squeeze the shoes together and try to work that spring so it goes in from the back side of the shoe. There we go. That was easy. We're just going to separate these shoes. Okay. All right, so now we're going to clean up the hub, and this is the mating surface where the rotor's going to ride. Okay, so we're just going to spray a rag with some solvent. And you clean up your braking surfaces. We've got this area in here. This is where the brake shoes ride, e-brake shoes. Inner pad. And of course your outer pad. That looks great. Let's move along. All right, so we're just going to put a little bit of Never-Seez on the hub along where the rotor's going to ride. Cool. If you got any on your shoe, wipe it down. Looks pretty good. I'm just going to go along the areas that I didn't get it on. So now we're going to put our rotor on, paying attention to this and this. The rotor spins freely. Just going to bottom this out. Very nice. We have our caliper mounting hardware. I'm just going to go clean these up with the wire wheel. All right, so we have these cleaned up. These are your sliders. You want to make sure these are especially cleaned up along here. I'm going to set these aside. We're going to grab our caliper bracket, and we're going to clean this up nice and pretty. We're just going to clean up this caliper. Just try to get off some of this crud. Now we're just going to add a little bit of caliper grease right along the contact points. The outer pad touches here. The inner pad touches right on this piston. So we have our bracket and our caliper bracket mounting bolts. Now we're going to bottom them out. Now we're going to torque these bracket bolts to 85 foot-pounds. One. Torqued, torqued. We're going to put on our outer pad. Take your inner pad and your caliper. I'm just going to slide it in. There we go. Take your caliper slider pins. Put one in through here. One in through right here. Now we're going to tighten up these sliders. I'm just going to get the first one started, then I'll start the second one before I tighten either of them down. That's snug. This one. We're going to torque these down to 18 foot-pounds. There's one. Let's see if we can get in here. There we are. We've got our two little covers. All right, let's get our clip back on here. Just start one side and bring the ear down around this and just force it in. Couple light bonks, give it a wiggle, make sure it's definitely not going to fall out on its own. This feels like it's nice and locked in. All right, so it's time to get our wheel up on here. Let's get it lined up. I've got my socket and my lug stud. I'm just going to bottom these out. So now we're going to torque these lug nuts to 95 foot-pounds. So now it's time to pump up the brake. Just 3 slow pumps till the brake pedal feels firm. Okay, so now we're just going to check our brake fluid. I just grab the master, give it a wiggle, and you can see the fluid line wiggling around. If you can't, turn to the left, take a peek inside, make sure it's at approximately the maximum line. Make sure you close up your container. Down the road you go.